The aging process is in your hands. It's not all in your genes. So the big reason why it happens is loss of collagen and elastin. One of the big things that you can do then to try to prevent the flabbiness, to prevent loss of the tightness of your skin, is to try to fight that collagen degradation process.
Dr. Anthony Youn,
globally renowned as one of the most trusted plastic surgeons and the author of multiple best-selling books.
Today, he's revealing how you can look younger and feel better.
So the first thing you want to do if trying to slow that collagen degradation process definitely is getting enough protein.
If someone just eats protein then, does that produce more collagen?
It should. Collagen is a protein. And so gelatin, bone broth that's been cooled, is pretty much pure collagen.
If people eat things like butter and lard and ghee and some other fats like olive oil and avocado, is that great for your skin?
Yes. So basically, there's certain fats that will create inflammation in our bodies, and there's fats that are going to reduce inflammation.
Let's talk about some at-home hacks. First one is skincare.
There is a very simple skincare routine that anybody can do that literally takes about 2 minutes a day. And we tested on people, and after 2 months, they looked approximately 5 years younger.
If you're dealing with things like saggy skin, cellulite, or wrinkles, you've probably heard the term anti-aging or even reverse aging. But really, most of us want to look and feel our best at our age. And here's the truth. There is no magic cream that's going to fix it. In fact, the most powerful ways to improve your skin doesn't actually cost you anything. And they come down to everyday choices. And often it's about doing less, not more. My guest today is Dr. Anthony Youn. He's known as America's holistic plastic surgeon. And he actually has over 8.5 million followers. And in this conversation, we're going to break down why our skin actually loses firmness, what cellulite really is, and the natural ways that you can fix it. And some of them take less than 5 minutes a day. So Dr. Youn, my first question, if somebody has a lot of sagginess, a lot of cellulite, is that just a natural part of aging, or is there something that we can do to fix it?
Well, the aging process is multifactorial. So yes, there's part of it's aging, part of it is how you age. And I think that we are unfortunately conditioned to believe that aging is in our genes and that there's nothing we can do about it. And things are just going to happen the way that they're going to happen. Now, there is some truth there. I mean, I do see certain patterns of aging that occur that basically are passed down from generation to generation to generation, but you do have a lot of control over that. You know, there is epigenetics and you can control how your genes express themselves. And this comes down to what you eat. It comes down to supplements. It comes down to environmental exposures. And then there are treatments, obviously, that you can do, things that you can do at home, obviously things you can do in office setting and that type of thing that can really impact it as well. So I think it's really important for people to realize that the aging process, a lot of that control is in your hands. It's not all in your genes.
Absolutely. And the work that you've done is so pivotal for people to understand that we can be youthful for life, as with your book, as it's a best-selling book. I want to ask you more about the flabby skin and the loose skin and the cellulite, because people really want to get rid of it. Let's first understand loose skin and flabby skin. What is that and why does it happen?
So the big reason why it happens is loss of collagen and elastin. So our skin is composed about 70 to 80% of collagen. Collagen is that part of our skin that makes our skin feel nice and tight and firm. And as we get older, we lose collagen. So starting in our mid-20s, we lose about 1% of the thickness of collagen every year. Now, a startling statistic is that women after menopause, in the first 5 years after menopause, lose 30% of the thickness of their collagen in just those 5 years, and then about 2% a year thereafter. And so loss of collagen is huge. You know, collagen, if you remember back to like high school biology, collagen is a protein, but it's a protein that the way I describe it is kind of like the logs of a log cabin. They're these fibers, okay, that interconnect with themselves. And kind of like a log cabin, as it gets older, the logs get frayed, they start to fall apart. The collagen does the same thing. We start losing it. And so one of the big things that you can do then to try to prevent the flabbiness, to try to prevent loss of the turgor of your skin, the tightness of your skin, is to try to fight that collagen degradation process. And this is one of the main causes of aging of our skin.
Okay, I do want to talk more about collagen because that is fascinating. I didn't know that there's 5 types of collagen. I just thought collagen was collagen, but there's 5 types which we're going to talk about. So that's flabby and loose skin. Now cellulite. People hate their cellulite, and especially amongst women. What is cellulite?
So cellulite basically is the fat that is the subcutaneous fat. So it's the fat that's below the skin and how it interacts with the fibrous connections that basically occur from the skin down to the fascia. The fascia is a covering of the muscle. So in general, our body contains several layers, and it's pretty consistent, although there's different thicknesses of these layers depending on the part of our body. So the top layer of our body is our skin. We know that. And there are various layers of the skin as well. Below the skin is subcutaneous fat. This is fat that you can pinch. And below that is the muscle layer, but what's covering the muscle is fascia. And we have these little fibrous connections, connective tissue connections from the fascia up to the skin that go through that fat. Now, when the fat gets puffy, if you get swollen, let's say you're retaining water, let's say you're really inflamed, then that fat can expand, but those fibrous connections going between the fascia and the skin do not expand with the fat, and hence you get the dimpling of cellulite. So that's in general why cellulite happens. Now, 90+% of women have cellulite. In men, it's much, much less than that. And that just comes down to the anatomy. You know, we do not have a lot of those fibrous connections, and some of the ones that we have are tighter than you see in women. Plus, you have a different amount of, in general, subcutaneous body fat from men to women as well. And so that can impact whether you have cellulite. So some men do have cellulite, believe it or not, but unfortunately, it is an issue that women deal with more often.
It's so interesting because I was looking at men and women, and even thinking about this interview, looking at the cellulite with women, men and women. I see it so much in women and not so much in men. So when your patients come to you, I'm assuming they're mostly women. Do they say, Dr. Youn, I just want to lose this saggy skin and lose the cellulite. What can I do? What do you tell them, and how quickly can they get results, given what we're going to speak about today?
Yeah, so you have to look at the drooping and loose skin is definitely different than cellulite. You know, so people who are young can have cellulite, and so there are certain things that you can do naturally to help improve cellulite. I mentioned earlier that inflammation. You know, if you've got overall inflammation of your body, that's going to create excess swelling. So there are things you can do at home very easily to reduce some of that swelling. And so some people will use compression garments. You can do things like body brushing. That can potentially help with it, because the idea is you want to move that fluid out of those areas. When you look at the cosmetic treatments that we do for cellulite, the traditional one, there's one called endermology, and that's been around for decades. And essentially what that is a deep tissue massage where you massage the deep tissues in a pretty aggressive fashion. You can do it with your hands, you can do it with a device, and you wear special tight garments to help kind of push that fluid through. And that can definitely improve cellulite. Like I said, you can do a kind of a version of that at home as well that can help with it. And then once again, your diet and your exposures are really important. So if you're eating a diet that's filled with ultra-processed foods, if you're eating a diet that's filled with excessive salt, then all of that can cause fluid retention, and that can worsen cellulite. So, you know, once again, cleaning up your diet, that can really make a difference. Moving, exercising, that can get that fluid going. And then you can do things, more holistic treatments, like I said, like deep tissue massage and those types of things too. Lymphatic massage, those can also help to reduce cellulite in more of a temporary fashion.
Okay, perfect. We're going to talk more about those specific solutions. I want to understand the lifestyle and things that people are doing to have the flabby skin and the cellulite. What do you think in terms of food? What is the worst food that people are eating that's exacerbating this aging process and flabby skin?
So really, when you look at the aging process and why our skin ages, I look at 5 different aging factors, okay? And all of these have to do with food. And so I wouldn't pinpoint one food. If I had to pick one type of food to try to avoid, it's ultra-processed foods. But in general, looking at 5 different causes of aging of the skin. So the first thing is nutrient depletion. So our food is not as nutritious as it used to be. There are studies that do look at the soil composition and the actual fruits and vegetables that are grown today versus, let's say, 50 years ago. And we do find that there is less nutrient density in our food, our fruits and vegetables today, as they used to be. So that's the first thing, is nutrient depletion. Second thing, as I mentioned earlier, is collagen degradation, is that reduction of collagen, that breakdown of collagen that occurs starting in our mid-20s. And then once again, in women, that goes much quicker after menopause. The third thing is chronic inflammation. Okay, so chronic inflammation, a lot of that has to do with sugar. Okay, sugar is a chronic inflammator of our bodies, and it does that using a couple of different processes. Glycation is one of them. We can talk about that as well. The fourth cause of aging of the skin also has to do with food, is free radicals or oxidation. And so free radicals are present in ultra processed foods. It's also present, free radicals are created by our body. Just the fact that we're alive, our metabolism creates free radicals. And these are kind of like byproducts, unhealthy byproducts that can, if they build up in our system, damage the DNA of our cells. And then the final cause of aging of the skin in general is a buildup of cellular waste. Okay. And so these are also the byproducts of metabolism, of basically just being alive. We need to give our body a chance to basically recycle that waste, to get rid of it. And eating and constant eating that we do in our society prevents our body from doing that. And so food has a huge impact on aging of our skin. A lot of that is in your control. But if I had to answer your question, say one type of food, then I would probably pick the general group of ultra processed foods.
It's interesting. I asked this question to people, and most people say French fries because it's the carbohydrates, the seed oils, and the bad fats. But as you said, the ultra processed foods. So we do need to get rid of these bad foods. And as you mentioned, the 5 ways that our skin can age. I do want to ask about this topic that's very popular in the carnivore keto space, which is insulin resistance. So how does that condition of insulin resistance and elevated blood sugar also exacerbate aging, flabby skin, cellulite?
Yeah, so when you're insulin resistant, but basically your body is not reacting appropriately to the insulin levels in your body, and so then you get a buildup of sugar in, and you can even go into diabetic coma and all of that in worst case scenarios. And so sugar, as I mentioned earlier, huge ager of our bodies, and it does that basically in 2 different mechanisms. So the first thing, which is going to have to do here, as you're saying, with having insulin insufficiency, basically insulin resistance. The issue with that is that you develop chronic spikes of insulin if you're eating too much sugar. So every time you eat a sugary food, you get spikes of insulin. Now, if, however, you have type 2 diabetes, if you're pre-diabetic, now you're going to have even worse because your body is not reacting appropriately to the insulin levels that are present in your body. In those situations, you're going to get, once again, these spikes of insulin. You're going to have high levels of insulin, and there are direct correlations between high levels of insulin and inflammation. Okay, so the first reason why the sugar is bad, and once again, as you're saying, pre-diabetic and being diabetic, type 2 diabetes is really bad for your skin and the aging, is because you're going to get this chronic inflammation that can continue basically and go on. And that's once again, one of the main causes of aging of the skin. Second reason why sugar is bad for you, and this is a bad situation, is glycation. Glycation basically is a process where the sugar in your body can actually adhere to the collagen fibers of your skin, the collagen and even the elastin. So as I mentioned earlier, our skin is composed 70 to 80% of collagen. That collagen breaks down as we get older. Once again, one of the main causes of aging of the skin is chronic inflammation. And what can happen then is you have all of this sugar in your system. It is then actually physically binding to the collagen fibers. And what that can do then is it can actually kink those collagen fibers and cause them to age prematurely. So physically, there are a couple of different mechanisms that this type of insulin resistance can create that can basically prematurely age you. It's glycation and that chronic inflammation that can occur due to these insulin spikes.
It's interesting that when we talk about chronic health problems like high insulin or high blood sugars, people like to look for a certain pill or potion or a cream to help with the external skin, but we do need to fix the inside. I really want to talk about collagen. This is so important. As I said, I didn't know that there was 5 types of collagen. Let's talk about collagen. So you mentioned that it's a protein matrix. If someone just eats protein, then does that produce more collagen?
So in general, it should. Now, I don't know of any studies that have actually looked at if you increase collagen, how does it impact the collagen of your skin? It does make sense because collagen is a protein, and some of the collagen supplements that you see basically are hydrolyzed, where you break down that collagen. And collagen is a large protein, and you break that collagen down into individual amino acids and short chains of amino acids called peptides. And the reason why you do that is that so your body can actually absorb it effectively. So it doesn't just just go through your system. Some of the people who have been anti-collagen supplements in the past have said, well, how do you know that your body even absorbs it? And the answer is if it's a collagen supplement that hasn't been hydrolyzed and broken down, we don't know that it necessarily absorbs it. But if it is hydrolyzed, we do know that your body can absorb that, because now, once again, it has been broken down into such small proteins, those amino acids and short chain peptides, that we know that the body can absorb that through the intestinal lining. So when you are eating sufficient protein, that's going to be really the first thing that you want to do to support the collagen of your skin. Now, like I said, do I know of a direct correlation between eating protein and increasing collagen in the skin? No. But once again, collagen is a protein, and you do need that as a general guideline. And so usually what I recommend for people, if you do want to reduce the collagen degradation process, you want to look at, in general, and I know there's a lot of different opinions on this, about 1 gram per pound, ideal pound of body weight per day. So in general, 120 grams of protein a day, 30 grams of protein per meal is a good place to start. So the first thing you want to do if you're looking at trying to slow that collagen degradation process definitely is getting enough protein. But once again, I can't tell you that there's a direct correlation in a study for that, but it does make complete sense. One question some people ask is about bone broth. Bone broth essentially is pure collagen. And I have a lot of colleagues of mine who swear that, hey, I drink bone broth and I can see the effects of that collagen that's in that bone broth in my skin, my hair, my nails, even feel it in my bones. There aren't any studies that I know of that actually prove that, but there are anecdotal stories everywhere. And it just makes sense, because there are studies that show that collagen supplements can work. So it does make sense that if you're taking that collagen in another form, like bone broth, that should hopefully work too.
Now, as Dr. Youn mentions, collagen is really important to help with saggy skin and also help with your skin elasticity. And a really easy way to fix your saggy skin and also your cellulite, is to simply drop the carbohydrates to under 50 grams a day. And some people need to even go zero carb, also known as a carnivore diet, and also increase their protein and fat. Now, with a zero carb diet or a carnivore diet, I have seen hundreds of people reverse chronic health conditions and also improve their skin. I have seen people improve things like heart failure, diabetes, thyroid issues, and also losing a lot of weight. And I got the same results when I went carnivore 5 years ago. But what I found helped myself and my community stay on track was medical support through carnivore doctors. And that is why I created a private online community completely off social media called Go Carnivore. This is a place that you can ask any of your questions to your favorite carnivore doctors, including the ones that you see on this very health podcast. And one of the best things about our community are our monthly challenges. We do things like our high fat challenge, our dairy free challenge, and even our protein challenge. And this is where our members get the best results. So if you want to try carnivore with medical support, just head to gocarnivore.com and try your free 14-day challenge and get your free meal plan. I want to ask about the 5 types of collagen. So there's type 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. What is the different types and what do they do in the body?
Yeah, so the type 1 collagen is the one that most people focus on because that's what's going to be in your hair, your skin, your nails, and your bones. And so that's when, if you look at, let's say, beauty collagen, that's typically type 1 collagen, and that's the one that you want to mainly focus on. Type 2 collagen is in your muscles. Not as important in general if you're looking at anti-aging. Type 3 collagen is in your cartilage. And so let's say if you have issues with joint problems, if you've got arthritis, then some people will recommend looking at a 1 and 3 collagen type supplements to help with that. Type 4 collagen and type 5 are not quite as important, I think, if you're looking at supplementation and stuff. One of them, 4, is in the kidneys, and then the other one is basically like kind of prenatal. And so the ones that most people focus on are 1 and 3, and a little bit less with 2.
So when it comes to getting 1 and 3 and a bit less of 2, can you naturally easily get it from the diet, or do you have to supplement with the hydrolyzed collagen peptides?
Yeah, I mean, the first step is definitely going to be with the diet. And I'm all about, I'm a fan of supplementation, but I also believe you cannot out-supplement a bad diet. And so definitely the number one thing you want to make sure is that you are getting sufficient amounts of protein in your diet, following kind of what we had mentioned a minute ago. In general, though, I am a fan of supplementation. So if you want to add to it, I think you have to keep in mind that taking a collagen supplement does not take the place of protein in your diet. Okay, so if you're looking at your macros and you're counting them, you cannot count collagen as your daily protein intake. So let's say if you take a daily hydrolyzed collagen supplement, and it's 12.5 grams, which is a very common amount and what I in general recommend per day. You do not want to count that 12.5 grams as 12.5 grams of your protein for the day. That doesn't count because it's not a complete protein. You want to definitely get that through your diet.
I didn't know that. Wow. Because my sister says, I have my collagen drink in the morning. It's got 12 grams of protein, not high quality protein. So if somebody's wondering where they can get a good quality hydrolyzed protein, collagen protein, because I looked online, I couldn't find one that had 1, 2, and 3, those different types. What is a brand that is good?
So for us, we have our own Youn Beauty supplemental collagen. It's our number one selling product. It has no taste to it, and that is type 1 collagen. Although there are 3 different peptides in it, and they are specifically made for, one of them is called Verisol, that's more for skin. There's Fortibone, that's more for the bone. I do not have one that specifically I would recommend that has type 1 and 3, just because as a plastic surgeon, you don't want me telling you what to do for your arthritis and for your joints necessarily. I'm not an expert at that. I do have a colleague of mine. He goes by the name Bone Coach, and so he's one that if you're interested, he would definitely have a lot of information. I had him on my podcast too, Kevin Ellis, really nice guy. But take a peek at his stuff, the Bone Coach, and he's got a lot of information on the collagen supplements if you've got joint issues. But for me, I deal with hair, skin, and nails. That's looking at type 1, and we have my Youn Beauty supplemental collagen that we recommend for that.
Okay, I'll pop the link in the show notes. If anyone wants to check it out, they can. So you've mentioned that collagen is different to gelatin. It's not the same thing. What's the difference?
It's similar. So gelatin essentially is when you take bone broth and you chill it and you cool it down and it becomes kind of like a solid. And technically gelatin is pretty much pure collagen. And that's how you know you've got good quality bone broth. There's a lot of places, bone broth is such a hot topic now. A lot of people love their bone broth to the point where you have these large, huge food manufacturers that are making bone broth, putting it in a can and throwing it on the shelf for really cheap. One test of whether you have a high quality bone broth is not how it is when you heat it up, but how it is when you cool it. And if you cool it and it doesn't solidify into this type of a gelatin, we know what gelatin is, it's kind of pseudo solid. If it doesn't do that, then it's probably not good high quality bone broth. So that's a test of it. But essentially gelatin bone broth that's been cooled is almost pretty much pure collagen.
Okay, perfect. Okay, let's talk about how to naturally fix the loose skin, cellulite and saggy skin, and naturally anti-age. So you mentioned the 5 ways that people can age. So we spoke about the collagen, what it is, and the 5 types of collagen. So these things now that we're going to talk about is going to fix those 5 sources of aging. So the first one is autophagy. Now, in your book, you talk about autojuvenation. What is that?
So autojuvenation is this idea that you can take your body's own natural regenerative abilities and use that to turn back the clock naturally. I'm a plastic surgeon. When I did my training, they talked about all these different interventions that we can do to cause our body to look younger, but it doesn't do anything to the internal aging, to our biological age that we really truly want to reverse. And so the idea really is, can you reverse both your biological age and the age at which you present yourself? And so much of that you can do using your body's own natural processes. There's a segment now of cosmetic medicine called regenerative medicine, where essentially you are just harnessing your body's own regenerative abilities to turn back the clock. And so basically autojuvenation is doing that. So it's using things like a certain type of a diet, certain supplements, skincare, and non-invasive treatments to basically turn back the clock naturally. And I firmly believe that the vast majority of people can do that. They can look 5 to 10 years younger, sometimes in span of just a few months, if they follow these types of principles.
Okay, step 1, autophagy. Why is that so good?
So one of the things I mentioned earlier is one of the main causes of aging of our skin is a buildup of cellular waste. And so basically, as we are alive, our cells create byproducts. And typically they're proteins that are, let's say, discarded organelles, that are mitochondria that are no longer functioning. And our body then has in our cells a buildup of this cellular waste product. Now, the interesting thing is our body has this function called autophagy, which is a recycling process where we can use this intracellular waste and recycle it for energy. And at the same time, by doing that, we can cause our cells to function more appropriately because they don't have all this cellular waste built up inside of them. But in order to do that, in order to get this autophagy process going, we have to stop feeding it energy. Okay, so if you're constantly feeding your body energy, there's no reason for it to recycle this intracellular waste because it doesn't need to, because it's got all the energy that it needs. But if you stop giving it that energy and you give it a certain amount of time where you don't eat for a while, then the idea is this autophagy process kicks in and it essentially cleans out your intracellular contents. And that is super important. Now, the question then is how long do you have to stop eating for this process to occur? And the belief in general is a minimum of 12 hours. Some people go anywhere from 12 to 16 or 18 hours is what most people recommend, and I do as well. It used to be that I had colleagues of mine who would say, yeah, autophagy is great. I do a 5-day water fast and really get that autophagy going. And it's interesting, and I think theoretically that may be a good idea theoretically, but in practice, it's very, very difficult. Now we're also finding that women, once they go through menopause and perimenopause, we're finding that maybe some of those extended fasts aren't quite so good for their system. And so for some women, 12 hours can be sufficient. Men typically are able to tolerate a little more of that of the fasting, a longer fast, I think, for benefit. And so for men, I'm looking at more like 16, 18 hours.
Okay, so just to clarify, so when someone's doing like fasting and intermittent fasting, is it that the cellular waste is part of this loose, saggy skin and the cellulite that kind of cleans it up a little bit? Is that part of the process?
I wish it was that simple.
Damn, I wish it was.
Unfortunately, intermittent fasting is unlikely to tighten up your skin. That would be nice if it was that effective, but it's going to be more of a prevention process. So if you want to slow that aging process down, then by all means, I think intermittent fasting can definitely help. But I don't want to give people false hope and say, hey, you start intermittent fasting and your skin's going to tighten up. There's unfortunately enough people on social media making kind of fantastical claims. And I'm a physician, and that's unfortunately not the case. I think it's great for your skin. I think overall doing a 12 to 16, 18-hour fast, depending on what your body, you need to listen to your body. What your body seems to thrive at, I think is great. But I would never tell you that fasting is going to tighten up your skin necessarily. I mean, if you lose weight by doing it, it may actually make your skin feel a little bit looser, unfortunately.
That's an interesting perspective. And I think that different people online say different things around, okay, do fasting and do this, and it's going to lose all the loose skin. But it's the combination of everything that we're going to talk about. But I appreciate your honest response as a plastic surgeon with so much experience. Okay, point number 2, what we eat. Now, my audience tends to be more carnivore, ketogenic, low carb, so heavy on the protein. Some people have some sensitivities to vegetables. So in that regard, what would you say is a diet for my type of audience if they really want to rejuvenate from the inside out?
Yeah, I mean, I think your audience is essentially doing a lot of those things. When I have in my book, it's a 21-day jumpstart. I do go over a lot of the diet stuff. And a lot of, I think, what people get when they do some of these diets, and I'm not going to tell you that my diet is this like revolutionary thing that nobody has ever thought of, because I think a lot of what people get when they do some of the diets, whether it's my diet or some of the diets that I have, when I have people on my podcast, it's because you're getting rid of a lot of those factors that are going to make you feel sluggish. It's going to make you feel inflamed. It's going to age your skin. And so I do think a lot of it is getting rid of those ultra processed foods. It's getting rid of those foods that are going to cause you not to feel so good. So once again, you mentioned certain vegetables for some people, they don't do well. I am in general a fan of vegetables. I think that those are healthy carbs, but I understand that certain vegetables people just don't do well with. And if that's the case, then I do believe in bio-individuality and that some people just tolerate certain foods better than others. But I think that there are certain foods that we can all agree in general, if you reduce the amount you eat of them, you're going to feel better. So it's going to be ultra-processed foods. It's going to be the foods that have added sugars to them. For a lot of people, gluten is a major problem for a lot of people and really can impact how they feel as well as how they look. Dairy, dairy is... It's interesting because it goes up and down. Some people love dairy, and then people don't like dairy. I do believe that in general, dairy is inflammatory to the skin. I think that conventional dairy especially is problematic with all of the hormones and antibiotics that are given to the cows. And so I'm not a big fan of dairy in general, but also admit that I do eat some dairy myself, but I limit it myself. So, I think in my opinion, what your audience is doing, if they're thriving doing that, then by all means continue. But a lot of it is getting rid of those bad things that are going to age your skin prematurely and cause problems with those 5 aging processes that we talked about.
What a lovely answer. You're such a nice doctor. It's very thoughtful to have it in reference of somebody that's following different diets because, somebody might be carnivore, somebody might be vegan, and it's up to them in what they want to eat. But whole unprocessed foods is very important. I do have 5 foods here that are higher in collagen and that people could probably eat. So bone broth, you said was very, very good. Number 2, tendons and ligaments from things like oxtail, beef, and pork tendons. Is that good?
Sounds good to me. I mean, a lot of that too is what you see in creating bone broth as well. So,
oh yes, good one. Okay, how about cartilage? Is that the same as what's in bone broth?
So cartilage, now we're looking at type 3 collagen, so that's even better. So especially if you have got issues with, once again, arthritis, if you've got joint problems, then by all means, now you're hopefully going to get some of that type 3 collagen in your system.
Okay, and that's from like chicken wings or beef joints. The next one is skin. So skin from chicken, pork, and duck. And obviously it should be, pasture-raised, good quality chicken, pork, and duck. What do you think about that?
That's interesting. I actually haven't thought a lot about that. I am an omnivore, so I do eat meat, but eating the skin, honestly, it's not my thing. It's my own hang up.
Really? Oh, I love the skin.
Yeah, I think it's just, I used to eat that. So I grew up, my parents are Korean, so I grew up eating this weird mix of a standard American diet and a Korean diet. And we would have fish where we would have a full fish just on the table and we would pick at it and stuff like that. And as I got older, and I went through medical school and we were dissecting, we would dissect animals in high school and college and then a human in medical school. I started not loving the bones and the tendons and the skin and all that. I think just because it always reminded me of when I was back in gross anatomy. So I do eat meat, but for me, that's just a little hang up with the whole skin thing. So.
You are so funny. I love crispy, like chicken skin or anything that's crispy skin. I don't like bones and like cartilage and joints and all that. So, it's interesting, even looking at these foods, I would guarantee that most people wouldn't be eating those foods, but they might be having more of the muscle meats and the whole unprocessed foods. So even incorporating some of it, like bone broth, might be a good way to increase collagen, reduce the aging.
And then you could get that in not, if you're somebody like me, and I think a lot of people in our society here in the US, they look at their meat very sanitized. They don't want to think that this used to be an animal, and so a bone broth is a great way to kind of get over some of that and still get some of those nutrients from those other body parts that you traditionally wouldn't necessarily, be eating here in the US.
Next category is healthy fats. So because my audience primarily does like a ketogenic diet, carnivore, low carb. So the role of ketosis, is that really good for anti-aging?
In general, I would say yes. I don't know of any actual studies that show that being in ketosis is going to improve your skin. I think being in ketosis overall is great just because, once again, you're in a low sugar situation. You're not dealing, you're going to help with that insulin resistance and all of that. But I don't know of any true studies that show that going in ketosis is going to improve skin or, you can reduce inflammation. I think that's helpful. But once again, that would be really interesting. And I've never seen a study like that where you take somebody who's on a ketogenic diet and you let's say compare them to somebody who's on a paleo diet and then maybe somebody who's on a vegan diet and see how quickly they age and does that impact it. That would be fascinating, but unfortunately, I don't know of any studies that have ever done that. And ideally, you'd want to throw somebody who's on a standard American diet as well to really, because I do think that some of the benefit of the different diets in general. Being completely realistic is, there's so many people who have books where people will do, I have a 21-day jumpstart and people have books where they do these jumpstarts and invariably you do it and you feel better. And I do believe, I was talking to a friend of mine, JJ Virgin, not that long ago, and we were talking about kind of these plans. And she said, Tony, I think that one of the main reasons why a lot of people do so well, whether it's your diet or somebody else's diet who's completely different, a paleo or somebody who goes vegan and they feel great for a while, is it's because they're getting rid of all the bad stuff that's caused them to look and feel terrible. And then you have to get through that process, and then you clean up your diet. And then it's way after that that they start realizing, are they truly thriving on that diet? Or is it that you basically just got rid of all the crap?
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, next one is healthy fats. So if people eat things like more saturated fats, I don't know how you feel about saturated fats, but things like butter and lard and ghee, cooking with those fats and some other fats like olive oil and avocado, monounsaturated fats, is that great for your skin?
Yes. So I mentioned one of the big things is chronic inflammation. And basically there's certain fats that will create inflammation in our bodies, and there's fats that are going to reduce inflammation. I think that's something that has gotten lost in the conversation back during the low fat craze of the early 2000s, where everybody was eating low fat, was that there are certain fats that can definitely reduce inflammation. So there are certain fats I think that are inarguable. You can't argue against them. So omega-3 fatty acids, we know, definitely reduce inflammation. Monounsaturated fatty acids. Saturated fats is an interesting topic because I don't know that it is 100% proven yet. I think that there's a belief that if you have higher amounts of saturated fats, but you are in a healthy diet situation, that those saturated fats can be overall beneficial. We do need some saturated fats, obviously, in our body for our brain to function appropriately, for our hormones to function. But if you're having high amounts of saturated fat, we do know that if you are in a high amounts of saturated fat, but also if you're having a poor diet with it, then it can be potentially harmful. That was something interesting in one of Dr. Mark Hyman's books that he was talking about when he was looking at the studies with saturated fat and is saturated fat harmful to the body. And what he had found in some of the studies that he was looking at was that, yes, high amounts of saturated fats, and if you're in a standard American diet, can be definitely harmful to your body. And we know that. And you look at traditional medicine and they'll tell you that, and cardiologists will tell you that. But the big question, though, is you take somebody who, let's say, is following the principles of a lot of your followers. They're on a ketogenic diet. They're not in a standard American diet. They don't have a high chronic inflammation in their body going on, and you put saturated fats there. Can it be potentially beneficial? I think the jury is still out, and it's definitely possible.
Oh, I was hoping for a solid yes, but that's fine. I mean, look, the healthy fats that we need to eat, and we know these omega-3s, Dr. Robert Lustig said, without a doubt, if you want to fix, for example, insulin resistance, healthy fats, omega-3s is without a doubt what we need to be eating. And that's things from like wild-caught salmon, sardines, all these different things. Okay, let's move on to the last one, things to help with flabby skin and increase your collagen. So importantly, sleep is very important. Who would have thought?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the big things, and I kind of put sleep with stress too, reduction of stress. A lot of people don't think about that when they think about the aging process, but it's so obvious. And if you just look at the surface, when you look at the US presidents in the 4 to 8 years that they enter office and then they exit, and you see how much they age, you know that stress plays a huge part in the aging process. And so anything that you can do to reduce that stress, you are going to help and slow that aging process down. So sleep is a huge part of it. I do recommend getting 6 to 8 hours of sleep every night. There are a lot of things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep. Definitely if you're one of those who likes to really monitor it, get one of those Oura rings, or you can just wear your Apple Watch and you can definitely follow that. The other thing that I'm a huge fan of that will also help reduce stress is meditation. Meditation can have huge impacts on how your body reacts to stress and the amount of stress that you have. And that can also impact the aging process. So I'm a big fan of meditation. Yoga, I think, also can help with that. But really, whatever you need to do to reduce your stress, that is going to 100% slow down the aging process.
Okay, so that was to do with diet and the things that we can do in our lifestyle to fix the aging process, help with the flabby skin and the loose skin. Let's talk about some at-home hacks. First one is skincare. Now, if I'm a very minimalist person, I don't want to use many products, what is the most minimal routine to have good skin and to have some anti-aging?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we actually tested this on a number of our patients, and I call it the 2 minutes, 5 years younger skincare routine. So there is a very simple skincare routine that anybody can do that literally takes about 2 minutes a day. And we tested on people, and after 2 months, they looked approximately 5 years younger. Now, I'm just going to put a caveat on that if, Rena, you do this for 2 months, you're not going to look 5 years younger because your skin already looks really, really good.
Oh, that sucks.
If you have the skin of somebody who's quote unquote average, who maybe, takes care of their skin, but, hasn't been using tons of products necessarily, then yeah, 5 years younger is a pretty realistic change that people can see after about 2 months. So this is what you do. In the morning, you cleanse your skin with a cleanser appropriate for your skin type. So there are gentle cleansers out there. We have one called our green tea cleanser that we recommend. But if you've got, let's say, oily skin, then look for a more foaming cleanser. If you've got drier skin or more sensitive skin, then look for a more milky or hydrating cleanser. So you cleanse your skin in the morning, and then you want to apply an antioxidant serum. The most common one is a vitamin C serum. So vitamin C is an antioxidant. One of the things I mentioned earlier was one of the main agents of our skin is free radicals or oxidation. And once again, these are these molecules that are created by our internal metabolism that can flood our body if we're eating a lot of ultra processed foods, if we're exposed to cigarette smoke and pollution. All this can create these free radicals that can basically damage the DNA of our cells. And so you're exposed to it on the surface of your skin by, like I said, outside factors like pollution and stuff. So applying an antioxidant serum like vitamin C can help fight that and protect your skin throughout the day. And then the third thing, we can talk about this because I know there's always controversy with this. If you're going to be out, to wear sunscreen, okay? And we can talk about that once again. So that's it. That's all you have to do in the morning. Cleanse your skin, apply a vitamin C serum, and if you're going to be out exposed, then consider a sunscreen. That's all you have to do in the morning. At night, definitely have to cleanse your skin. Number one, you got to get rid of the day's worth of dirt, grime, pollution. Got to get rid of that makeup. So you got to cleanse your skin at night. If you're wearing makeup, a lot of people will do a double cleanse where you either use micellar water or you can use a makeup removing oil cleanser, and that can get rid of the makeup as a first step. And then the second step, you use your regular cleanser after that. And then you want to apply an anti-aging moisturizer. The one I usually recommend to start out with is a retinol. Retinol is a derivative of vitamin A. It's one of the most studied anti-aging ingredients that is available in skincare. It can help to exfoliate your skin. It helps to thicken the collagen of your skin. It helps to reduce fine lines and wrinkles and even reduce blemishes. And there are even some studies that show that prescription strength retinol, which is tretinoin, can even reverse early pre-skin cancers. So it reduces inflammation. It's really a jack of all trades of anti-aging cream. So that's what you want to do at night. Cleanse your skin and then apply an anti-aging cream like a retinol. And that's really it. And then the only other thing you want to do is once or twice a week, you want to exfoliate your skin. You can do that with a gentle scrub where you can mechanically exfoliate your skin, or some people use, let's say, little pads that have certain acids on them like alpha hydroxy acids or glycolic acids that can help to exfoliate that skin. That will help get your skin turning over more quickly to help it stay nice and smooth and youthful. That's a 2 minutes, 5 years younger skincare routine. Very simple. Pretty much anybody can follow that. And that's what we typically recommend as a starting point.
Okay, so for your products, which is Youn Beauty, it's chemical free. So there's no parabens or phthalates and all the rest of it. I'll put that in the show notes so that people have that as a reference. But I do want to offer some natural solutions. So cleanser. Can you use coconut oil?
So coconut oil is not necessarily a cleanser. It's more of a moisturizer, and I would avoid coconut oil on the face. The rest of the body, by all means, it's great, but it is comedogenic. Okay, so especially if you have a history of acne, then I don't recommend coconut oil on the face. But on the body, as a moisturizer, by all means, coconut oil it up. It's filled with definitely healthy fats, great moisturizer.
What can you then use as a cleanser for a natural alternative?
So for natural alternatives, some people will use things like actually yogurt. That can help with it. Sometimes there are people who will, as far as there's not a ton of natural alternatives, like DIY cleansers. Yogurt is one that may help a little bit just because it does have some antimicrobial properties to it. But yeah, I can't think of any specific cleanser that would be more of a natural product. Most of the natural products that you're going to use are going to be things that you can use as more of like a treatment mask or as a moisturizer, but not necessarily for cleansing because you do want to get rid of that dirt and grime. So yeah, just offhand, I can't think of anything specifically. Even baking soda, some people use baking soda as part of more of a scrub, but technically that's not a cleanser. You don't want to do that every day.
No, I wouldn't think so. Okay, moving on to the vitamin C. So I know that there are some brands like the Timeless Vitamin C. So it's got ascorbic acid and ferulic acid and vitamin E in it. So is that like a good combination? Like the ingredients matter for vitamin C?
Yeah, so a couple of things are important with vitamin C. You mentioned that vitamin C and vitamin E, that is really important. We have our own CE antioxidant serum. There was a company called SkinCeuticals that came up with a product called CE Ferulic, super popular. And the idea is that when you combine vitamin C and vitamin E, you get a synergistic effect in how powerful it is as an antioxidant. And so they came out with this product, CE Ferulic, after they tested it and found the synergy between vitamin C and vitamin E. The problem with their product is it's 1 ounce is like $180. I mean, and who wants to pay that? So then, so for me, I created my own CE antioxidant serum. It's not the same as CE Ferulic. It's not a dupe necessarily. It's just my own vitamin C and vitamin E as a serum. It's 2 ounces and it's like 60 some dollars or something, I think. And so that's, I think, much more realistic, but that's the idea. So you mentioned that, the timeline, that definitely when you're combining vitamin C and E, I think that's really important. And the other thing people need to realize with vitamin C is absolutely essential to the production of collagen. And now we're going back to kind of high school biology. Remember those stories that we would hear about these sailors who would go sailing off across the Atlantic or across the Pacific, and they would leave with all these fresh fruits and vegetables. And then eventually they'd be halfway across the ocean and they would have all these sores and boils and opening up because they ran out of fresh fruits and vegetables and they didn't have enough vitamin C and they would get scurvy. And so that scurvy can actually kill people because what happens then is if you're not getting vitamin C every day, and vitamin C is a water-soluble vitamin, you have to get it in fresh fruits and vegetables every single day because your body does not store it. And if you're not getting enough of it, that collagen breaks down. And once again, you start having sores from it. Well, collagen also forms parts of the inside of the body as well. And that's how people can actually die from it.
Interesting. And then part of the natural alternative with diet is to include citrus fruits as well, part of the vitamin C. Is that correct? So citrus fruits.
Yes, super important, obviously, citrus fruits with vitamin C, but also important because the phytonutrients and the fiber so important in the diet.
Okay, next one is the not tretinoin, but the retinol. I use a tretinoin. So why is that so good? It is like the most studied anti-aging cream out there.
Yeah, so most of the studies are on tretinoin. Tretinoin is prescription strength, so you got to get it typically from a doctor. Retinol is over-the-counter strength. So if you do have access to a dermatologist or a plastic surgeon and they're willing to prescribe you a tretinoin, and your skin can tolerate it because it's strong. My skin can't tolerate tretinoin. I've been on it once before, and my skin literally, I broke out. It was red and flaky and angry. It did not like it. So I don't do tretinoin. Retinol you can get over the counter in various strengths. And what retinol does is it's over the counter because when you apply it, it's inactive, but it undergoes two chemical changes once you apply it to your skin to basically become tretinoin. So it goes from retinol to retinal to tretinoin. And that's why it basically does the same thing. It's just not quite as potent. And so basically there are tons of studies on tretinoin, the prescription strength version, that show that it does all those things that I had mentioned. Once again, it exfoliates the skin, it thickens the dermis, the deeper layer of the skin, which is composed of collagen. It helps to reduce fine lines and wrinkles. It helps to reduce blemishes. And then once again, the really fascinating thing is it can even reverse early pre-skin cancers. And so patients of mine that have skin cancer and they come to see me for reconstruction, those patients I recommend go on tretinoin. Now, the problem is you're not going to know what skin cancers it prevents because they just don't pop up. But it can potentially help with that.
Okay, let's move on to the sun and sunscreen. Now, this is so controversial, isn't it?
It is. Yes.
What are your thoughts about sun and being in the sun in terms of aging?
So, I think that there are extremes out there. And for me, I am kind of a moderate with it. So there are extremes because you'll talk to dermatologists and they'll say every day they put on sunscreen the morning they wake up. And even if they're going to be sitting in a basement all day, with no sunlight or anything, they're going to have their sunscreen on. And then there are people, friends of ours who don't believe in sun protection. They think that the sun is going to be so healthy for them and get as much sun as you need and it's good for you. And I think that the truth is somewhere in between. I do think that getting sun is therapeutic. Obviously, we need vitamin D, and vitamin D is produced when our skin is exposed to the sun. That being said, I'm a plastic surgeon, and Rena, I can't tell you how many patients I've seen come into my office with a skin cancer on their face, and it can be potentially disfiguring. Like, you do not want to get a skin cancer on your face, period. Uh, Not to mention, obviously, that certain skin cancers can be deadly, but in general, with the majority of skin cancers are going to be more disfiguring than deadly. You don't want either of them. So how do you do that? I think in a reasonable fashion and stay healthy, and not, let's say, disrupt your hormones and all of that. And so what I usually recommend in general is, for me, I don't wear sunscreen every day. Some days I'm literally, the only time I'm exposed to sun is when I'm going from my house to my car, from my car to the operating room or to my office, that type of thing. And in general, then those days, oftentimes I don't wear sunscreen. But we do know that the UVA rays of the sun can cause premature aging. We know that they can definitely damage the DNA of your cells, and that's what can lead to skin cancer. And then UVB rays can also cause you, obviously, to have a burn. And so I do recommend, if you're going to be out in the sun for extended periods of time, especially if you're going to be out in the sun in those times where the UV rays are the highest, so, there's a UV index. When that UV index is high, above 6, 7, that type of thing, you do want to protect your skin. What I recommend in general is a physical blocker if you can use that. And so there's a difference between chemical blockers and physical blockers. Physical blockers are zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. There's no question as to the safety of these products. They basically just sit on the surface of your skin and prevent the sun's rays from damaging it. If you have children, 100% you want to apply the physical blockers on them. The negative of the physical blockers is that they can feel kind of tacky on the skin sometimes, number one. And number two, if you have darker skin, they can cause your skin to look whitish, okay? And it can cosmetically be an issue for some people. So if you're Caucasian, if the color of the sun block doesn't bother you, 100% on your kids, whatever skin color they are, I do recommend using a physical blocker, because there are some questions about whether some of the chemical blockers can be hormone disruptors. And the main chemical blockers that we worry about are oxybenzone and octinoxate. Those are the two ones that are prevalent in a lot of kind of commercially available, inexpensive sunscreens that ideally you want to avoid. So my recommendation is, children, use a physical blocker, zinc oxide, titanium dioxide. Adults, I recommend that as a first line. But if you have darker skin, if you put it on your face and it's too heavy and it doesn't, the color and everything doesn't work for you, then there are some chemical blockers that are very good that are not considered hormone disruptors. And those are like avobenzone, Mexoryl XL. I'm Korean. I don't go to Korea much. I was there about a year and a half ago. And I stocked up on Korean sunscreen because they have much better blockers than we do here in the United States. So I would recommend avoiding oxybenzone and octinoxate, and then going for those chemical blockers that are considered safe and effective if you've got the darker skin colors.
That is a very well-balanced approach. When you said that people have very extreme approaches, so some is like yay for sun and some is no for sun. So when it comes to, I guess, my realm in terms of the carnivores and ketogenic people, so sun is great, sun is important. And we do have a lot of proponents that say sun is not dangerous, as you were saying. But what it is that, there's a real difference between tanning and sunbathing for hours and getting a burn and redness. And that's what you don't want on the skin. So I do want to make that distinction, which is what you're saying. Sun is so important. And actually our ancestors were out in the sun, but they didn't get much skin cancer, partly also because of all the inflammation that they didn't have in our modern world.
I think we also need to consider a couple of things here. I think that if you want to get sun, which I agree, it's therapeutic. I live in Michigan, and my God, in the wintertime, when the sun comes out, we're like, oh, thank God. And everybody goes out there and gets it. So it is therapeutic. And 100%, I encourage you, try to get it earlier in the morning and later in the evening. That way you're not going to get as much sun damage. I think the other thing we need to consider too, when you're talking about our ancestors and people long ago, is that the length of time that they lived is very different than what we're at right now. People back then would live 35, 40 years, and in general, even if you're getting, a lot of people in my generation, we got a lot of sun and did not protect ourselves when we were younger. And you don't see those effects. You don't see, 30-year-olds necessarily today getting all these skin cancers. It's usually people who are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s when that happens. Well, back then, people didn't live that long. And so they never really had the chance to develop this skin cancer. But had they lived to that, to 50, 60, 70, then most likely those people back then probably would have developed some of these issues as well. They just never lived long enough to experience that.
Absolutely. It's a fair point. Let's move on to red light therapy. What do you think about red light therapy for the anti-aging effects?
So I'm a huge fan of red light therapy. If you're going to do one thing at home to turn back the clock, like if you don't have access to a dermatologist or a plastic surgeon to do, let's say, chemical peels and laser treatments and stuff like that, one really nice thing you can do at home that's available to everybody, as long as you can afford it, because they're unfortunately not inexpensive, is to get a red light mask. You can get a mask that you can put directly on your face that I think is great, or you can get, let's say, a tabletop device or one that you can put all over your body that can really impact it. And the idea behind red light therapy is that energy from the red light can actually cause the mitochondria of your cells to produce more collagen and more elastin. It increases energy and causes production of ATP in those mitochondria. So I mentioned it causes mitochondria not to produce more collagen, but to produce more energy, or ATP. And that basically energizes your cells. And there are studies actually that show that if you do a regular red light therapy, it doesn't have to be every day. Typically, it's a few times a week, and you do that for upwards of 2 months. That there are studies that show that it increases collagen and elastin in your skin. So I think that's great. It makes a lot of sense to me. I think we do need to separate red light therapy, which is more superficial, from infrared. A lot of people get those mixed up. Okay. Infrared is going to be more of a detoxing phenomenon. That's going to go deeper into your tissues. That's why you have, let's say, infrared saunas, because that can help with that detox effect. Red light is going to be much more superficial. That's truly more anti-aging as far as the surface of your skin. I myself have a infrared and red light sauna that I use because, hey, if you can get both, why not? But they are definitely different.
Well, that's why you look so good for your age, because of all the natural thing and your skincare plus the red light. Let's talk about some DIY stuff. Masks. So an egg white mask. You've mentioned that you've heard about it. Have you seen any benefits from anyone using an egg white mask?
So an egg white mask basically is you take an egg white, you beat it up, and then you can basically just apply it to the surface of your skin. If you do that, it's interesting because you get an immediate tightening effect from it. And so the skin feels tighter once you remove it. Now, egg white is pretty much just pure protein, okay? And so I myself don't necessarily believe it will create a permanent effect on your skin, but you can get some temporary tightness from that type of a treatment. There are other types of DIY treatments that can also do more active things to your skin. So if you are applying, let's say, a combination of, just for example, orange juice, and you can find orange juice, let's say, with yogurt and a little bit of honey, and you mix that up and you apply that to your skin, now you can get some other types of effects as more of and in some ways like a peel. And so the orange juice has citric acid in it that can help to exfoliate the skin. Yogurt has lactic acid that also increases exfoliation of the skin, also has healthy fats in it. And then honey actually is a natural antibacterial. And so if you've got issues with acne, that can help with that too. And so for those people who may not have the financial means, let's say, to purchase a product that will help to stimulate that type of exfoliation in the skin, then those types of treatments can be helpful at home. In general, the only thing with the egg white mask I'd be careful with is that egg whites aren't always sterile. There's rare ones that may contain salmonella, and so that you just want to be careful with.
What about a whole egg mask? 'Cause if you add the yolk, it's more moisturizing. Do you think that's good too?
Yeah, so that's going to be more beneficial just because we do know that there are a lot of vitamins in the egg yolk as well. So that may also be a bit healthier than technically egg white. I'm not a huge fan of egg whites. I'm more a fan of full eggs because why take out the yolk that contains just so much beneficial, fats, the cholesterol, the vitamins. It's so much more in it that it just doesn't make sense just to go with the whites themselves, in my opinion.
Don't we love you? Oh my God. If we had more doctors like you screaming out, eat more egg yolks, wouldn't the world be healthier? Okay. Last bit here, which is talking about more invasive procedures that people can do. I'm like a bit nervous to talk about this on this podcast because it's a health, natural podcast, but Botox and fillers. So do you think that would be good for somebody if they want to have a bit of anti-aging and not have the wrinkles and things?
So I think that the most important thing, and the way I look at overall anti-aging, is like you're building a house. And as you build a house, you always start with the foundation of it. And the foundation is going to be the food that you eat. Okay, that's the most important thing with anti-aging, is getting on an anti-inflammatory, collagen-supporting type of a diet. So that's the number one thing. Second part of the house is going to be the foundations is the bottom. The first floor of the house is going to be basically supplements and skincare. Okay, things that you can do proactively that are optional, but you can do proactively to naturally help to support the aging process of your skin. And then on top of that is going to be at-home type of treatments, things like what we just talked about, like red light therapy and all of that. And then way at the top, the attic of the house is going to be these actual invasive or minimally invasive cosmetic treatments, okay? Those are completely optional, and you can age great and not do any of that stuff. It's purely optional. And we do know that any type of intervention like that does have risks. And that's where you want to weigh the risk versus the benefits. So Botox, okay, is the number one cosmetic treatment probably in the history of the world. Every year here in the United States, over 5 million people undergo Botox injections. And the way that Botox works is it is a very powerful toxin. It's one of the most powerful toxins in the world. And if you inject a small amount of Botox into somebody, you can kill them almost instantly. But if you inject the most minuscule amount of Botox into a muscle that when that muscle contracts, it creates wrinkles on the face, it will cause that muscle to stop contracting for about 3 to 4 months and those wrinkles to basically smooth out. It prevents the nerve impulses from basically contacting the muscle and causing that muscle to contract. And once again, lasts for about 3 to 4 months. So how risky is Botox? Just to tell you, in my office, I have 4 injectors and I inject occasionally as well. We've been doing it for 20 years. And 20 years, we have probably treated over 20,000 patients, possibly more. And we have never had a single serious complication from Botox. The worst we've seen in, I think, 3 patients is a little bit of a droopy eyelid for a few months. And that's it. So that's pretty darn good when you're talking about a medical intervention. Now, that being said, I mentioned earlier in this podcast that I do believe in bio-individuality. I think that certain people react certain ways that may be inconsistent with the general population in general. Their body just acts the way that it wants to. And there are stories of people. I have a good friend of mine, Arielle Laurie. She's got a real popular podcast, and she has just had horrible reactions to Botox to the point where she is not doing it anymore, and she's doing some face taping and things like that instead. So I do think that there is a tiny percentage of people who just don't do well with Botox. It has been around now for many, many decades. So I don't think that from what we can tell, there's any long-term, as long as you're tolerating fine, there's no long-term negative outcomes of Botox, let's say, systemically to the body. And it really is something that you can get addicted to. Not that there's something addicting to it, but just the fact that you get addicted to the results. So if you want to try a cosmetic treatment and see a quick change, then I wouldn't be afraid of it. But obviously understand that any medical treatment has risks. Filler is a different story. That technically is much more risky, believe it or not, than Botox.
Yeah, I think that people in the comments of this YouTube episode might have some not different opinions about Botox, but you have people that are for and against it. But it's good to understand it is the top if you want to do it. You don't have to do it.
Yeah, and I'm like I said, I mentioned Arielle because there are some people where Botox they have their own reactions to it, and if you go online, you'll find there's some people who just have issues that have gotten sick from it. We don't know the mechanism of why that may happen, and once again, I do think from what I've seen, it's not that common. But I would never tell a patient or somebody who's considering it that it's risk-free, or that if somebody did have a reaction to it, that's not real or anything. I mean, we have to always take that very, very seriously.
Okay, last question for you. If someone is just thinking about, they want to lose weight, but they want to fix the saggy skin, anti-age, boost the collagen, and they do everything that we discussed, except for the Botox, how quickly could they get results?
So the problem is the whole saggy skin thing. And realistically, it's really hard to seriously improve sagging skin when it is really excessive. So if somebody loses a bunch of weight, that skin starts sagging. I don't want people to have unrealistic expectations that anything you do non-invasive is going to make a huge change. I'll tell you, Rena, we have treatments now to try to treat sagging skin that are like laser treatments, that are radio frequency treatments that are very painful, that heat up the skin, and the amount of change you get is really, really small. So I think that the way you have to look at this is if you're dealing with, the one thing that the one thing where plastic surgery, unfortunately, is typically necessary is excess skin. We can help thicken hair without surgery. We can help with spots, improve spots and fine lines and wrinkles and stuff like that. But the one thing that we can't truly do in a dramatic fashion is get rid of excess skin. And I think that's really important for for your audience, because I don't want people to go and spend let's say, money buying all these creams and potions and stuff like that, thinking that their skin's going to tighten up, if it truly isn't going to do that. And that's the one thing that I would love, love, love to be able to create, let's say, a device that looks like a CT scanner, but you put your body through it and it just shrink wraps the whole body. That would be, I would love to have something like that, but it just doesn't exist. And I think that's what's important. So a lot of these things that we're talking about are very, very powerful. They're going to be more powerful in preventing the aging process and for some of those more, superficial skin issues than if somebody loses weight and they've got hanging skin. That is a really, really tough problem to treat non-surgically.
Okay, that is a great distinction. Dr. Youn, if somebody wants to find you more, where can they find you?
So I have my podcast. It's the Dr. Youn Show, and so it's available wherever podcasts are available. I'm all over social media, and I have my online store, younbeauty.com, where we have Youn Beauty products. They're skincare and supplements made with natural and organic ingredients.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. People are going to love this anti-aging, collagen-boosting episode. Thank you. Thank you for joining me today on this episode with Dr. Anthony Youn. Now, if you're learning from and enjoying these free episodes, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. That's an excellent zero-cost way to support what we do here. You can also find me on other social media accounts. I'm on Instagram and on Twitter under the name of The Primal Podcast. Now, if you love this episode, check out this episode with Dr. Eric Berg. It is all about how to lose weight and fix your visceral fat with his best 61 tips. Finally, thank you for your interest in root cause healing, and I'll see you next week.